Aloha. Today I wanted to talk about a whole bunch of things that are on the outskirts, just kind of like my own observations of the way pieces are fitting together in relation to time, the sun, the moon, solar eclipses, flat earth, the mentality of the control grid as a whole, like the military industrial complex, what that actually means as far as on a spiritual level in relation to the human relationship to nature and spirit as a whole, the rise and fall kind of thought process, and also related to various cosmologies and things here and there. Just kind of throw this stuff out there, and then related to other things too. But this was just a realization that I had yesterday. I was watching this Discovery thing on Hitler and seeing how that whole thing went down, as far as that time frame went, just from the Discovery Channel's perspective, just seeing that stuff. But regardless of all that, one of the images that came out of there was the arrow, and the arrow reminded me of so the arrow in there, and the arrow was one of the symbols that the SS used, and here it's in Nordic language. It supposedly came down from Odin, this alphabet or language or whatever. It's the arrow is the tire in here. It means to sacrifice. When the SS used it, it was the tire rune, and rune in Nazi Germany. The tire rune was also known as Kampfrune, battle rune, or Vile rune, arrow rune, and was symbolic of leadership in battle. In that Discovery Channel documentary, it was referred to as the symbol for New World Order, like the world order. That's what that symbol was, and that hit me in my head. I was like, "What the fuck?" Like, I gotta check this out. So, this is so. It was widely used by various young people organizations after World War I, and later by Hitler's Jungen and the SA. Worn on the upper left arm, and it indicated the graduation from the SA Reichsführerschule. It was also used as the badge of the SS Recruiting Training Department, as well as the emblem of the Waffen SS Division 30 Januar. It is symbolic of Tyr, the Odinist god of war. It, too, is obviously a pagan symbol that predates Christianity. So, I was looking at this documentary last night, and I was... so I spent 7 years in the Army, and the United States Army, and I understand how the ceremonies are. I've seen how the training goes. I can see, when I was watching that documentary last night, the military, the United States military, and I've known this before, but it was just so thrown in my face last night. But the military, the United States military, is directly a mirror image of the Nazi setup. The Nazi whole mentality. You can see it from the obviousness of the salute. The salute here is the same as the Heil Hitler salute. It's from the marching to the frames of thought, the homeland protection stuff, even all these words that have been used. And then this goes back, even predates all the way, goes back to Rome and the Roman times. So that people who are have a close connection to like the United States Army and the military and all that. Oh, it's not Nazi. So okay, well, when you can understand that there are Nazi scientists in NASA, then it's not that far of a stretch to understand that the very nature of the military that we are under right now in this country is also part of that control grid. Not to mention, if you go even further back, that Rome, so all the stuff that Nazi Germany came up with came from Rome. And then that whole mindset of we are the chosen ones, like we are the ones. So that was the outward storyline, but the inward storyline, when you go into the depths of it, is truly the attempting to protect its genetic survival on an earth plane that can literally make that particular race go extinct. So they created this whole mentality of we are the chosen ones, the blonde hair, blue eyed, pure blood Aryan nation sort of mentality needs to be protected by the war, the military industrial complex, the people before them, the civilizations before them. Rome was doing it, and now it's the military industrial complex ran by all the powers, so-called powers that be behind the United States Army and all the armies, that the facade of war as a whole, because it's all a big show. They have to go to war with somebody, something, in order to create themselves out to be the heroes. And it's the way you tell the story that makes you out to be the hero. So they control the news, they control the media. This is where you can tie in the whole the Jewish influence, that whole thing with Hollywood and the news, the mainstream media, all that stuff can all get tied into, because it's all a big war within a war. And the people who are paying the attention to this stuff are just the innocent bystanders that are really just allowing this system to evolve as it goes along, because we are ignorant of how deep the storyline goes, from stuff like flat earth to the psychological manipulations of the evolution program, the university system, the white supremacy program as a whole. Like, they're literally slaughtering melanated peoples on a regular basis on the streets, and people are still acting as if this stuff doesn't have any connections, any meanings, any further connections to like the supremacy programs of Nazi Germany, which the military is based upon, the police units are based upon. When you see the origins of the police departments in the United States, that goes back into slave catchers. The origin of the police departments in the United States were originally designed to catch runaway slaves. It is an actual program that is designed to do what it is doing. What you see on the news, what you see all these hashtags for these people being taken out, that is the design of it. The design of the news is to amplify the emotional response and the particular perspectives of how you see those storylines when they show an individual who was shot 6 times by the police, unarmed, 6 times shot, and then they put his mugshot on television. That desensitizes people. It shows it shows a lack of sympathy. When people see that, they say, oh, well, he was a criminal anyway. That is a mentality that is a regular basis mentality that gets programmed into an individual mindset, and gets manipulated subconsciously. So when they have that teenager that Caucasian teenager girl who shot and killed a homeless guy, then they showed like a happy face picture of her selfie. That's a psychological program. This is all connected. So when I see the connections to the mainstream media, the military, Rome, Nazi Germany, NASA, the globe model, the university system connection, there's a very definite connection to the White House, your senators, your Congress, your politicians as a whole. And symbols have meaning. So as soon as I saw this symbol and it meaning world order, that's when this symbol came up. So for people who are still having difficulty seeing this systematic implosion of politics, a systematic implosion of the mainstream media, the systematic implosion of even the university system as a whole, when they eventually start coming out with some of the flat earth stuff or the new sciences, whatever is new, they're going to have to, it's going to be a world order of some sort that is based in some kind of spiritual connections. That's the only way that you can control, and that's what was going on in Nazi Germany. They were heavily into the occult, and that control grid was very much into astrology and astronomy and all kinds of psychic, occultic stuff. They went around studying all kinds of different versions of reality in order to affect their manipulation program, their whatever idea of order in their favor. And so basically, I just wanted to share this real quick, the symbolism meaning, and then you can even see like the arrow here, and then even the two. I even took it as far as seeing those two bars, the H. If you just put the arrow to the side, and then you'll just have two single bars right there. So I was seeing that as a symbol down in the far bottom left, as two of these are the true ego, is or Isis. Knowing that the CIA created ISIS, just like the 9/11 inside job stuff, all this stuff is connected. It's all manipulated. It's a movie reel for you to watch, and they are paying with blood. When you sign your contract to go into the military, you are giving your life away. 17, 18, I went in at 17 years old. You don't know shit when you're going in there. You're just giving your life away. You put your hand up, but that's an actual ceremony, and you swear in to you swear your life away pretty much until you can get out. And then if they don't care, they'll send you into a death camp for the benefit of whatever kind of system that they construct, that they think that they're lies. They send people to Iraq after 9/11 because dumbass George Bush said so. and then like they make all this other proof behind it. You believe it, they put it on the television, and boom, millions of Iraqis killed, millions of people all over the world, shockwaves of death. This is a death cult. So they take these images and symbolisms and activate them in your face on a regular basis. So yeah, true ego and to sacrifice. That's what I was seeing. This Hillary symbol meaning. Just on a very just regular observation. I was just like, well, let me just see what these symbols mean. So anyway, that was one thing that came across yesterday. The other thing I was looking at was the arrow hands on the clock in relation to not necessarily arrow hands so much so, but really just I was questioning the I wanted to know more about like what Rahu is in the solar eclipses and how that relates to time, because I was seeing obviously the sun and the moon are a clock of some sort when you're looking at the flat earth model, when you're looking at the sun and the moon, period, like the cycles, the biological cycles of the moon. There's a clock there. When you look at the sun, the time is actually based on the movement of the sun, the days, like even, and then when you go even further into it, you understand that the word hours actually comes from Horus, which is the oh man. So the origin of the word hour is very interesting. It comes from the Egyptian god Horus, and Horus in Egyptian mythology is the son of the god Osiris. Horus is symbolic of the sun, and his son is considered to be the savior of the world. This makes Horus the savior of the world in Egyptian mythology. Also the savior of the world, also called Christ. So this is the time, like the energy of how I'm seeing this, the consciousness of the earth plane. Like if we are all a spirit, we are all connected. To use a label to understand what that consciousness would be, because there are so many different representations of the Christ energy, you can understand like the consciousness as a whole, or for the earth plane in the human relationship could be understood as like the Christ consciousness. In relation to that is time. So time, the rising and the fall, frequency talk. I'm just spitballing stuff here. So frequency talk, rising and falling. Every day the sun comes up and the sun goes down. The sun rises and the sun falls. So there's a time of light, and then there's a time of darkness. So this goes into the duality and the nature of it all, and the light and dark. And then you go into the I was looking at the Rahu. So the time frame for the eclipses is about like 6 months. Every 6 months there's an eclipse. So I was thinking like, well, if the sun and the moon are actually some kind of clock in relation to our actual biology, our actual consciousness, our actual understandings of our relationship to this physical reality, then Rahu also has to have some kind of relationship to that whole thing. So having understood that, where is it at right now? The frequency of the eclipses is about every 6 months. So I found this chart, and like even this crop circle stuff goes into like the clocks and the weeks and stuff and everything. But there's a chart down here. Okay, so yeah. So this is the solar or lunar eclipses during the years 2006 to 2008. The frequency between these solar and lunar eclipses is about 6 months. It goes lunar, solar, lunar, solar, lunar, solar, lunar, solar, solar, lunar, lunar. So it's like, it's kind of all over the place. But that goes into actually what I was trying to understand what Rahu is. So if Rahu is, and Rahu is also actually two entities of some sort, Rahu and Ketu. And Rahu and Ketu are both affiliated with either the sun or the moon. I believe Ketu is affiliated with the sun, and then Rahu is more associated. It even says right here, Ketu is descending node of the moon through the eyes of Indian astrology. Ketu is known to afflict the sun more so than any other planet. This is the contrast to Rahu, which is associated with the moon. So we've been told to understand, to split ourselves, to separate ourselves, the masculine and feminine, the sun and the moon representation of ourselves. The divide and conquer mentality of that spiritual connection has been compartmentalized into a splitting of an understanding of the sun and the moon, when it's actually, how I'm seeing it now, a representation of the frequencies of the rise and fall we are the sun and the moon, and both the sun and the moon have a dark side, and that is the Rahu and Ketu energy. And it is basically, I was looking at the solar eclipses as, that's what it was coming up as. I was so this image popped in my head in order for me to think about like Rahu and Ketu yesterday. And I wasn't seeing this as literally like a planet. I was seeing this as the void. I was seeing this as the only way you can see the void is to have it be eclipsed by the sun or the moon. And the void is part of our experience. So you have the void, you have the darkness, and you have light. So you have Rahu, who actually voids out the sun and the moon, but you have Ketu, who is basically an earth element. So there's a void of the earth, and then all the shit that happens here on the earth, and then there's a void in the skies, so like the as above, so below. So I was seeing this as like, when we're looking at this, not an actual body, it's a depiction of the void. So we have like a universe in our the entire biosystem that we are in right now inhabits everything. We have the light, we have the dark, and it's not as simple as we've been told to be. It goes into all these ancient Vedic cosmologies and Hindu everything. Like everything is connected. So like when you see this happening, it's actually a part of the clock, part of the clock that we've been separated from, that is actually being manipulated to work against us within that separation grid, because we don't know what the hell is going on. And then all this bogus ass science that they talk about, well, the sun goes in front of the moon, and the moon, it's the shadow of the earth. They tell you your earth is casting a shadow on the moon or the sun, and that's what's blocking this and that. That is a total separation. So you're basically, when you understand that or you believe that, you are floating in space. You are floating in the void, in the separation from all that is your reality, on a spiritual plane, because people in the university system, on the news, in your politics, have all convinced you that you exist within their creation myth, or their lack of creation myth, actually, because you're just a mistake. You don't even have a creation. You have no connection to creator. You are just a cosmic mistake in the Big Bang. But when you start going into the ancient cosmologies and start to research stuff like Rahu and Ketu, and the actual information of the sun and the moon, this is basically how I was just looking at the balances of our frequency, our days, how it relates to time itself. So I was seeing the minute hand, which moves very quickly, is like the moon, or the second hand, excuse me. So the second hand, the red hand on here, is like a representation of the moon, and then the second hand is a representation of the sun, and then the hour hand is actually a representation of Rahu and Ketu. I don't know, that's just how I was looking at it in reference to the way time moves. Like the solar eclipses move the slowest, the sun moves quicker than that, and so the sun, each minute, I guess, would represent the sun. And then when you lay it all out too, like it's like people who are good with numbers or numerology and all that stuff, whoever it is watching this video, that they can be able to, tear it apart with 60 minutes in a day, 24 hours, there's another 60 seconds in a minute. So that can go to the whole 666, the physical reality, the melanin, that all of that, it can all be tied in as far as understanding. People who are good with all that stuff, they can do that. I'm just really just sharing how I observed these dots that I connected yesterday, and related it to time, because I know in order to understand what's going on here that is beyond the control grid that these symbols have put up here for us to believe in, these symbols that are having a metaphysical effect on our reality, these symbols that are being used against our children, 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids who are in the whole Bernie thing. There's no separation from the Bernie stuff and the Hillary stuff. This is a spiritual program that is being manipulated right now. So in order to go deeper than that, I had to understand like what time it is. So we are on military time. We are on the war, the world order time, which is the separation grid. So yeah, understanding the rise and the fall of the day based upon the sun's movement across the sky, and then the moon affecting this is how the patriarchal system can get in place when they separate you from understanding your balances, your frequencies, and they can demonize the feminine energy by putting all this shit about like the moon and all that, the twilight stuff, the werewolves, the vampires. They can connect all this stuff to the moon to psychologically get you thinking and feeling a certain way, just as they do with putting mug shots of black people on television when they get shot and killed unarmed, and putting selfie images of white people on television when they actually kill somebody. Like, that is a psychological program that is definitely connected to the supremacy program. It's a mentality in order to protect the genetic, like the basis of the program as a whole. These are not mistakes. These are not just happenstance. There's a reason why this stuff. There's a reason why the hours in the day comes from the etymology of the word Horus. The word hours comes from Horus, and Horus is the Christ energy of the Egyptian mythology, or that rises and falls every day and defeats darkness. And then so there's so many different angles you can come at it from. I just wanted to share this because I'm still trying to, or I still am further understanding what Rahu and Ketu represents in relation to our time, to the human storyline, and what this whole thing is. So people who are watching this video now, basically, like when we all share information, they just send one thing from one person to the next, and then somebody else will find something, and then they'll share something. But I just really wanted to share, like, how this exists in my reality as far as understanding now, and how it's more of the balances of each, and then we are as above so below. So if we have the same frequencies as the sun and the moon, and then the light and the dark, then we need to understand that and what that really means. And if it's not, like for me, that doesn't necessarily mean the sun and the moon anymore. Now that means the sun and the moon actually represent light, which is what they do. Like the moon is a light now. Now when you see that there's cold light that comes off of the moon, and there's warm light that comes off of the sun, and those two are not against each other. There's actually an energy behind that space, like the void energy, or the Vedic traditions refer to it as Rahu and Ketu, who's more of a malefic, shadowy energy. So like the shadow of the sun and the shadow of the moon both have meanings. They both have an effect on our earth plane experience, which then has an effect on the human experience. And then you can go into like further details with all this other stuff. So basically that was all I really wanted to share. If you want to go into more about what this is, if you have any more information on this, I would be appreciated in the comment section. So yeah, it's actually more jacked up when you don't understand stuff. So that people get afraid of, looking into what this stuff really means, and they're actually afraid of themselves. Because it's actually ignorance is actually more evil than understanding what evil actually means and how that exists. Because you could be following something that is actually evil, like these politicians who use these symbols to control you and enslave an entire mentality and peoples all over the earth plane. And they go around, people are actually voting for this shit. They're actually happy and celebrating and clapping and laughing and all that energy that was in the Bernie stuff. And now people are like, well, what am I going to do now? I'm not going to vote for Trump. I'm going to have to vote for Hillary. And that's just a fucking worst program. They're playing checkers with your psyche on top of a chess game with your soul, and nobody really understands the actual board, let alone the pieces on the board, because the storyline is so distractive. It's so layered and layered beyond and yeah, so I just wanted to put this out there as another perspective that I hadn't really seen before, kind of balled up in one little storyline, so I decided to put it out there. So yeah, that's basically it. So thank you for joining me. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.